Okay, it's 4 o'clock. This is a special meeting of the Select Board to deal with the library in the Parker Room of the lower level of the Opera House.
Right.
First time I can say that, so that's kind of nice. Our agenda, I guess there aren't too many copies of it, but the agenda just has 5 items on it. First, we'll have a presentation of the draft survey from Bruce of the Portland Research Group, and I'm going to ask the Select Board, the Library Committee, and library representatives, and the public to hold their fire through that. There'll be a chance to talk about it later, but I want to give him a chance to go through his presentation uninterrupted. I think that's fair to him. After that, we'll have public comment. We will limit that to 2 minutes per person to 40 minutes total, although if the group stays fairly small, we can be a little bit lax about that. Third item is discussion among Select Board and Library Committee. And this is where we'll have our questions for Bruce to ask him about how he's proceeded so far. And then the Select Board will discuss and vote on how to proceed. And then we'll adjourn and go home for dinner. Okay. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Bruce from the Portland Research Group and see what he's come up with.
You mean we'll immediately jet to the Washington Street conference room to go to a middle school building committee? That's what he meant, not dinner.
Okay, well, thanks for having me back. I appreciate this and the process and so forth. So what I thought I would do is first give you a sense as to what the whole process will be for collecting data without going into great detail, because I don't want to bore you with that, and then give you an overview of how the questionnaire is set up, and then we can scroll through the questionnaire. I wasn't really going to read every single question word for word, but just kind of scroll through the questions just so you can see what we're going to be, or what we're proposing to ask. Okay, so the way the mailing works is a postcard will be sent from the town alerting residents that a survey is coming from us and encouraging you to participate, especially online. And, excuse me, then you'll receive the survey package, which will include this survey, which will be printed on 11 by 17, so it's 4 regular sheets of paper like this, folded in half, so it's all one document, no staples or anything like that. A postage paid envelope and a cover letter with instructions. Okay, so that will be coming following the alert from the town, and then following that, and we'll time this in terms of how responses are coming in, will be a third mailing, a postcard, just reminding those who have not yet submitted a response to do in fact submit a response, because we want to encourage as much participation as possible. This is a public comment from the whole town. That's how you can think of it, from as many people in the town as possible. And you're not limited to 2 minutes or 3 minutes. You're limited to the amount of space you have on the survey to fill out. Okay, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. There will also be an opportunity to fill this out online as opposed to the paper survey. And there's a link that's cited in the survey, in the cover letter, in the postcard, and in both postcards, where you can go to a website that will have this exact same survey there. The way the web survey works is that each question is on a page of its own, and it just skips to the next question by itself. So you don't have to scroll down or do anything. Once you get into the survey, all you have to do is follow instructions on how to fill it out, and it'll automatically go to the next questions for you, and then you'll see a submit button at the end, submit it, and you're done. You don't have to go to the post office or anything like that. It's the least expensive way to provide responses to this survey. Okay? So that's the process. The way the survey is set up, it's four pages. As I said, it's an 11 by 17 piece of paper folded in half. The first page just asks your opinion about whether or not not your opinion, but it asks if you voted in November or not, if you voted in favor or not in favor. Then there's an opportunity for you to just say in your own words why you voted the way you did or why you didn't vote. And then there's some questions about how much various items influenced your opinion to vote in favor or not in favor. We thought we had that record. It's a good way to just start out the whole get the creative juices running in your mind, so to speak. The next page is all about how you use the library and so forth. What's important to you in the Rockport Public Library. And I was gonna go over it in more detail in just a second. The third page are specifics about information that will be used to develop another proposal for the Rockport Public Library. And then the last page is just information about yourself. It's not used to identify anybody in any specific way, but it helps us understand who's responding to the survey and what's important to various groups or various types of people in the community. So that's the way it's set up. So, let's see if I can do this. So again, this is the first page of the survey. We repeat a lot of information at the top here that you'll get in the cover letter, just because people will read some documents, but they won't read other documents. So we want it to be everywhere so people can't miss it. And we also cite the website up front here and encourage people to go to the website and fill out the survey there. It just is a much less expensive way to collect the data, process the data, and so on and so forth. It's very, very easy to use. You actually have more room to write in comments in the questions that ask you to just write in comments. It's just a very easy tool to use. So we encourage that. So then we have the first question about what people did at the referendum in November. Did they vote, not vote? Did they vote in favor or against? And that's important just to get a starting point as to how different types of people are responding. This page is important because we do a lot of customer satisfaction work. And what we don't want to do, because the vote was so close in November, is what we don't want to do is we don't want to toss away those things that seem to work for everybody. Why start from scratch if there are some commonalities in the proposal that work for everybody? So that's why we ask this question. And then we can also identify those specific items in the proposal that didn't work for people. And so those are the things that can be focused on for the new proposal. I think it's important to scroll down. I think it's important to scroll down. Why?
Mouse is way down at the bottom.
Oh, see, I can't see that.
Yeah.
Bring it up. Yep.
Yep, there you go.
Oh, but to the right. Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
I see what I gotta do. Okay. So we call this an open-ended free response question. So people can write in their own words, what their whole opinion was of the proposal, why they voted the way they did, or why they didn't vote. We want both people who voted and people who did not vote in that referendum to participate in this public comment research, just because we need everybody's input, okay? And, see, I can't see the mouse.
There you are. You're in the middle now.
I can't see it. Oh, I see it.
It disappears, yeah.
So do I need to be,
I think you need to go up.
I need to go up, sorry. I've never used this before.
Does it work with a two-finger scroll? Do we know?
That's what I'm trying to do. Oh, okay, I see. Then we have this question, again, right up front, just to drill down on specific aspects of the proposal that was voted on in November. And it helps us gauge, again, what specific items worked and didn't work in that proposal. Then we have the next, oops. We ask if a household has a Rockport Public Library card, how often it's used, or how often they visit the library, rather. What are important aspects of the library? Some of these things may exist, some of these things may not exist right now. But what are some things about the Rockport Public Library that are important to people, just so people can start thinking about how they use the library and what they would want to have in a Rockport Public Library proposal? And then, of course, we probably didn't think of everything. Why does this work sometime?
You gotta go
Go
up
up
a little
again
bit.
with your mouse, your cursor.
Yep.
So I apologize, I can't. And then there's this question here, question 7, just in case we didn't list all of the library offerings that somebody might want to have offered through the library. Here's an opportunity to write that in. Then just an overall question about how important it is to people to have the Rockport Library, how important it is that the Rockport Public Library is an important part of the community. Just a high-level question just to see if people agree with that or not. Then we go into specific aspects that could be used as, that will be used as input for a new Rockport Public Library proposal. You know, there's a lot of different things. There's a question about, the first question's about parking. The next question is about the size of the building. You know, was the proposed building too big, too small, just right? A general question about the design. We can't really get into real specific aspects of the design because I'm sure everybody has their own idea and it would just be way too many different options. So just a very general question about the design, whether you want it to fit in with the buildings around the library at One Lime Rock, whether you want to make it kind of more of a plain building without a lot of architectural details, or do you want a building that's a statement for the future? Okay, so just some general direction on the exterior design of the building. Then a question about how much you'd be willing to support as a taxpayer for a proposed Rockport Public Library project, and then what you think the overall cost of the project should be. And then some information about you. And the information about you is very important. It's all confidential. Portland Research Group is the only group of people that will be seeing the specific data. Any reporting of the data will be in total, in aggregate, along with all the other respondents. So you won't be identified in any way by the personal information that you'll provide. So, you know, how many months per year do you live in Rockport? How old you are? Oh, this didn't. Oh, that's a formatting. It's not like this, but the presence of children, because it's important for use of the library if people have kids or not, and what age those kids are. We don't really care how many of each age group they have, but just if they have kids of the various ages. And then education, employment status, household income, gender. Then there's room for you to make additional comments. If in the survey we didn't cover a specific area that you had hoped would be covered and you want to be able to provide some information on that, there's an area here. You can, of course, use as many pieces of paper as you want. And then we need to have all the respondents need to fill in their street address, not their mailing address, because some people have P.O. boxes, but their street address, just so that we can track where responses are coming from. Okay? And it's as simple as that. It shouldn't take too terribly long to fill out. We wanted to balance getting a lot of information with not having it be a burden on everybody to fill out, because we want as broad a response as possible. And we tried to draft it such that the questions are easy to respond to, that you know exactly what we're asking, and so that you'd be happy to participate. So that I really didn't feel like reading every single question in detail. Is that enough?
I think we get the general idea, and if
The
people have
general idea?
specific questions, then we can get back to
Okay.
those as we go
I-
on.
I apologize for my misuse of the pad here.
No, that's quite all right. Okay, this is now the time for public comment, and as I mentioned at the outset, we're going to limit public comment to 2 minutes per person and to 40 minutes total. It's 4:15, so we'll go until about 10:05 or so, or 5:05 if people want to go that long, 2 minutes each. We do have a small group here today, so if after everybody has spoken for 2 minutes, if others want to speak a little bit more, as up to the board, we can go that way. We do want the comments to be limited to the development of the survey and to what Bruce has presented. We don't want to get into discussions about the various facets of the library and things like that, but just comments on what Bruce has presented and how you think we might like to forward. So if anybody wants to comment, we do ask you to come up to the podium because this is being streamed and will be available for folks to watch at a later time. So, anybody wish to comment? Well, that was easy. I guess.
Come on now, come on.
Going to dinner soon.
I'm Ames Curtis. I live in West Rockport. I think most of you know I'm a strong advocate for a new public library on the elementary school site. So one of the issues that I have, I think the survey, what you've outlined, is excellent. I'm not going to complain about that, with a couple of questions that I believe need to be highlighted or tweaked. Let's put it that way. I really honestly believe in this community, the key question is the location. Some people will say cost, some people will say design, some people will say square footage, et cetera, et cetera. But I genuinely believe, and I don't think I'm alone in thinking this, that the question of location is probably the dominant issue about the library. So there's a certain skew to the questions in terms of doesn't come out as a specific question. Where would you like the library to be located? What is your first choice for a new public library? And the second thing is that based on the financial question, you start with $3.5 million. And I also genuinely believe that if it remained at $4 million at the RES site, that might have passed. So I'm wondering if by putting a lower figure there, or if you should put no figure there, somehow give people the opportunity to say what they believe in terms of location and what they believe in overall cost. So much of the questioning has to do with the previous proposal, the previous design, the location in that neighborhood, the cost that would go toward that neighborhood, and so forth. So I think it's going to be important to tweak the questions to really address that big one about where the library should go. I also have another question. This is going to go out to all residents, renters, homeowners, voters, etc. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Weeks, and I'm just a resident of Rockport. And she kind of beat me to it, what I was going to say. I just skimmed through the survey first time I saw it, reading it as I did. And there was the question about Lime Rock in the very beginning. What do you think about Lime Rock? But I agree that there needs to be a direct question about RES. In terms, how you want to put that in the survey, but there really does need to be a question where people ask about specific location, and the RES site should be mentioned by name so people have a chance to weigh in on a direct question about it, rather than, well, I didn't vote for the other one because I thought there was a better site. I think there should be, how do you feel about the RES site? Strongly, negative, whatever, just like there is about the Lime Rock. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to make a comment on the survey or the questions? As long as it's about the survey, yeah.
I don't know if this belongs on the survey, but I think it could be an interesting piece of the survey, which is which site, once you delineate which site is the preferred site on that, which of those sites might attract the most new residents and new businesses to Rockport? Because everybody's looking for ways to lower the property taxes and increase revenues here. And so it would be interesting to see which people believe might attract more to the community and increase our development.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Sorry I'm late. Selling blueberries for Coastal Mountains Land Trust. They're delicious, by the way. And they're open tomorrow, 11:30.
You're eating into your time, Dave.
Anyhow, I'm I'm sorry, I did not see the question, but I agree with the two speakers who preceded me that there will be some continuing ambiguity about the location unless there is a direct question about the RES. If there's a direct question about if One Lime Rock Street is mentioned, then I think RES needs to be mentioned. I'm not sure that that's the principal reason that the first proposal failed. I don't think anybody really knows that, but I do think it is a factor, and I do think that we need to tease that out and get the most unambiguous answer to that we can possibly get. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Chapman, Rockport resident. I'd like to remind you that if you do open the question up and say, which site do you prefer, it's going to throw into question or into doubt all the rest of the answers, because what are they answering it to? The size? Well, maybe people think One Lime Rock Street, the library was too big, but at the RES site, it would be too small at that same square footage. The proportion to parking question comes into play. Is 14 parking places enough over at RES versus over here? Considering over here there are many other parking areas around that could be used. So if you address that question, you're going to address you're bringing in a number of other issues.
Thank you. Yeah, by all means.
It's just a research thing. So whatever questions end up in the questionnaire, we'll be able to see all the responses to the rest of the questions by people who answered one way or another in each of the questions. So we'll be able to take care of whatever people, we'll know how they responded.
My issue then is, how do you know that the people know that if they are thinking it really should be at RES, that they are really answering all those questions? Because you start out, did you vote for or against? So now, are you for or against the square footage? Are you for or against this? Well, it was based on your vote. Not that it could be at RES, but because you voted no. Was it too small? Even though they may check, they would have preferred RES. Maybe now it would be too small, but they voted on it because it was they voted no because it was too big. You don't know why they voted no.
Right, what I was responding to is that based on what people respond, we can cross-check all the responses by all the other questions.
Well, I just want to say, I don't think the question should be worded, do you prefer One Lime Rock or do you prefer RES? I think there should be a direct question about, it could be, did you not vote for the library because of its Lime Rock location? There could be a question, do you think that the RES site would be a great site for the library? I mean, it doesn't have to be, do you prefer? It's, what do you think, was the location the issue? And what do you think about RES? Because if it's not going to be Lime Rock, it's going to be RES. And since we're spending all this money on the survey, I think it would be wise, and it would also be prudent economically, to see what kind of support there is for RES. Because if it comes out Lime Rock is terrible, then, you know, it's good to know, well, we have 3/4 of the people supporting an RES library. You know, just to know. The parking, as I read that survey, wasn't that there's only going to be 14 parking spaces for people to utilize the library, that there's going to be 14 parking spaces that are flat with easy access to the library. I didn't read that as we're only going to have 14 parking spaces for the whole library. That's not what it was meant for, was it? Was 14 spaces that you could easily access the library from.
We're dedicated in the parking question.
I agree if we're gonna do the survey and pay for the survey, it can't be ambiguous. We have to ask every question, and is what Bill's pointing out, I think is legitimate, what you're pointing out is legitimate. I think all of these have to be taken into consideration. So it appears to me that the Portland Research Group may need to go back to the drawing board and redesign some of the questions.
Okay, does anybody different want to make a comment at this point? Okay, I think we have the tenor of the comments from the people who have spoken, so why don't we move on to our discussion and our questions for Bruce, and I would include Ben and Ann as a representative of the library committee in that discussion as well, so I guess I would offer you, Bruce, first the chance to respond sort of in general to the comments that we heard from the public.
Okay, as far as location is concerned, we do mention, you have an opportunity to mention something about location in the free response question after how you voted, question 2. And then in question 3, we asked specifically about the location at 1 Lime Rock Street, whether that was on a 10-point scale, a very negative, if you had a very negative impression of that, all the way up to very positive impression about that. So we'll be able to discern whether the 1 Lime Rock location was an issue or not. Okay, I think that was most of the questions.
Question? How are we doing on space as far as your ability? Are you pushing, we don't have enough space for another question?
Well, that's a loaded question. Pardon me. I try to keep the font size at 12 points so that everybody can read it. If you get much smaller than that, it kind of gets tough to read. I could probably squish in one more question depending on the size of the question.
Bruce, could you call up number 6 for a moment?
Oops.
You gotta go up.
You gotta go up, Bruce. There you go.
No, you went down again.
Oh, I'll get the hang of this. By the time the meeting's over, I'll be able to do this.
All right. 13, 12, 11, 9, 8, 7, and 6.
There's 6.
Uh,
I'm gonna go up a little.
maybe go up a little.
There you go.
Maybe go up one more. Maybe I missed the question. Maybe it was number 5.
Number 5 is how often you visit.
Maybe it's number 4.
Maybe it was number 7.
4 is if you have a library card.
Yeah, no, I guess maybe it's further down.
Might be better if you tell them which question you're looking for.
Well, it was hard. It was talking about how you feel about how important.
Oh, okay, that's down here. That's number 8.
Yeah, number 8. I'm sorry. Yeah, great. Thank you. That's a very subtle point, but where it says there, to what extent do you disagree or agree that the Rockport Public Library? Now, if you change that word to a Rockport Public Library is an important part of the community, that might get more to the point that you're trying to determine. And the reason I say that is because right now when you say the Rockport Public Library, in my mind, do you mean the old Rockport Public Library that's on Lime Rock and how it was, or do you mean the Rockport Library that's on Commercial Street? Or do you mean a library that we may build in a future? And so like I say, it's a very subtle point, but you know, basically, are you asking how important it is? Do you think that Rockport needs a library? But if you leave the word "the" in there, again, it's kind of ambiguous. Is it our old library, or is it our current library, or our future library? And I'm not telling you how to word the question.
Can I make a stab at this? The library is the library, no matter
Yeah.
where
Where
it
it
is.
is,
Whether
right.
it's on Commercial Street, wherever, whether it's in this building, whether it's commercial, whether it's the
Yeah.
library is the library.
Well, yeah,
I think the
no,
intent
no.
of the question is to ask, do you think it's important that Rockport have a library?
Right.
Yeah.
That was the point of this question, was to gain overall community support. What is the community support for the library.
Right, and I agree
I
with
think
that.
it's, my gut feeling is that they have there's strong support for the
Yeah.
library.
Well, I think it ought to say then, well, again, I'm not telling you how to do it, but perhaps it should say the Rockport Public Library System or presence. It's very subtle, but again, you know, when I saw that, I wasn't quite sure, you know, how would I answer this, and what is the point of the question?
Well, I think it's just what Rick just said, where how important is it to the community to have the
So
Rock-
it
the
should
Rockport-
say a Rockport Public Library then.
I agree with you.
I mean, it's very subtle, but it's,
A says, clarifies it.
yeah.
regardless of where it is.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I have a few things to say. I completely understand the comments that I'm hearing from the public, and I've heard from Ames, I've heard from Carol, I've heard from Dave in particular, essentially the same thing, that it's incredibly important that we be very specific about location. I have to tell you, I feel extremely strongly about that. And I want to tell you about some of the things that I see in the survey that disappoint me with regard to that. The location issue, I see it as essentially buried in question 3 amid a bunch of other factors. Some of those other factors that are addressed in question 3 also get follow-up questions of their own. Questions such as the style of the outside, et cetera, et cetera. There are several of them. To me, the structure of the survey that way
To see what the
creates the impression that perhaps those are the issues that fundamentally drove the votes. When my intuition tells me, and I think many others would agree, that the location issue is at least as important, if not more important, than those others. So to me, it is essential that we be direct about location. I think that Bill has a valid point about the way that cross-referencing the location issue can muddy the waters on the answers to some of the other questions. But I have to say that I feel that some of the other questions have muddy waters already because of the way they're worded. Let me give you an example. The question, and I think it's question 11, I think.
Well, can we scroll to question 11 so we can see it? Oh, wrong way.
You know, it would be very helpful too, when people reference questions, if we could scroll through to get them. He referenced question 3, and I don't recall what 3 was, but.
Which one of the question about exterior design? Well, the responses, particularly the first response, is relative to the location. And if the location that is previously addressed in the survey as One Lime Rock, I believe that people will have in their minds similar to the buildings around One Lime Rock. Now, I'm not opposed, I would like to know the answer to this, but I think it's valid that this question has some relativity to the location, which is not sussed out in other questions. So I think it needs more work in that area. There are a few other points. We have a question about cost. And I think that that's a great question to ask. But what I think is missing, what will be missing in the minds of most people when they take this survey, is how much was the proposal that got voted down going to cost? Because other than that, they're just numbers. And so,
Wait, say that again?
so we see this question right here?
Yeah.
Okay. How much investment in total do you think is required to create a Rockport Public Library? Well, I think the average person doesn't really know what those numbers mean. I think people do know perhaps what they mean if they see what the referendum that was voted down was going to cost, if that's right in front of them. So we voted down a referendum that was going to cost X much. How much relative to that would you support? I think that that would be much more meaningful than just numbers that don't necessarily mean anything to the average person. With regard to parking, I think we all know parking is an important issue. No matter where this library goes, the parking needs to be improved. And I don't know that parking needs a separate question, because we know that parking needs to be much better than it is. I mean, I'm not opposed to hearing how many parking spaces do you think the library needs in direct proximity to it, no matter where it is. But we all know that it's not good the way that it is. There's one more thing while I'm on a roll. Could I see question, oh, yeah, that's it. I had written down, I found the entry to that confusing.
Which one?
Question 9, the one about parking. And that was my corollary comment, that no matter where the parking is, we know that it needs to be a lot better than it has been. And I don't know that that's something we need to suss out in a survey. I guess that's it, but I can't tell you how strongly I feel that we need to be more direct about the location.
Can you go back up to question 3, the one that has the location in it? Thank you.
No, you're off the top. Gotta come down.
No, down, just,
And-
there,
No,
oop,
not that
now
far,
you're-
too
Better
far
way to
down.
do- Darn Mac.
Now, you're right there. Okay, now
A
scroll.
regular computer, a real computer, not one of these Mac things.
It's this question.
Okay, so a couple of things, and I don't necessarily disagree with you on the money part. I just wanted to highlight that we did have 2 aspects of the previous proposal and the money tied to it in this question, but they are not necessarily in close enough proximity
Yep.
for one to recall that.
Yep.
But I just wanted to, show that out there, that you purposefully put in the previous numbers as a frame of reference. And I'm struggling with the location one, and I struggle with it because obviously it's extremely important. It's extremely important. What I'm struggling with is, if I look at that, I go, oh, that's a clever way of capturing RES and Lime Rock in one question, but naming, yes, that one site that the select board has voted to have it be there. But I look at that question and I go, if you're an RES person, you're just gonna circle a 1, or you're gonna put your own little 0 right next, or you're gonna write stinking RES right in there. But at the same time, I do think that the folks here have valid points about having RES appear by name. And so maybe spend more time with this survey than I have. Have you thought about that? And why did you come to the conclusion that RES didn't necessarily need to be named by name, and that this question would give us the information to help us make a good decision?
Do you want me to respond, or do you want?
I can
Yeah.
respond. The board has already made a decision on site. And until that changes, I mean, it's not what people want to hear, but the board made a decision on site. There was a vote. The vote was 4-1 to keep the library on the Lime Rock Street site.
Rick,
So can I infer that that's a
That's what the vote is.
no? It's all good.
but what I have to say about that, and I've said this before, but I think it needs to be said again. The fact that the board did that has resulted in a dynamic in the town which leaves people feeling bad about the decision. And my advocacy for being direct about location on the survey is not to try to direct the results toward a particular preference of my own, because I actually don't have that entrenched a preference. But I fear that if we're not really direct on it, people who feel embittered about the fact that the board did that back in the spring will feel even more embittered and feel that they're not heard. And I said it in a previous meeting, what I don't want, I would grieve to have people driving by a library, no matter where it is, in the future, and thinking that that was put wherever it is in a way that didn't really get at the town's wishes.
although I appreciate your input on that, the board at the time, made up of Bill and others, listened to several of the public in regards to that, and made a decision based on not only that, but other professionals, which is where they landed their vote at One Lime Rock. And as Rick said, until that changes, that's the way it is, I
Well,
think,
but
in my
it's-
mind.
I mean, we are looking for input from the public, and as I look down this list of, I don't know what the right word is, categories here, or whatever, it does strike me, I guess, that I think almost all of them, except the location do have a follow-up question.
question.
And so that does, in the design of the survey, if you're gonna follow up with everything else, maybe we need to follow up with that too.
And
And unless I'm missing something, I know there was a question about what do you think the building should look like? There were questions about cost. There was a question about parking. Interior layout and design, I guess not, although the questions about how you use the library could be considered to go there.
Add to that, yeah.
And the input from everybody is great. One thing that I had found that was missing, that was touched on partially, is, I want to get back to who's replying. I know you're sending them out to all the voters, but having stood out there when there was almost 1,100 people vote last June, and seeing who was there, having been there for 30 years, I would bet that 50% of them weren't taxpayers. So I'm trying to find out, when you get your reply, if you're a voter taxpayer or just a voter. Because that, I mean, if you have 1,000 people reply and it's a 50-50, whether you're a voter or a voter taxpayer, you still aren't any further ahead. But you don't necessarily want the voters driving the taxpayers' bills.
But that's the reality of how the town works.
No, I know. I understand that. But it might surprise you a little bit.
I want to make a really positive comment about this survey. We're hearing a little bit of negativity here.
85, 90% of it.
The first question was just what I wanted to see, which is, how did you vote and why did you vote that way? That's a critical piece of information for us. I've said that all along. We need to know. And it's fine to ask a lot of questions about, you know, how do you feel about the library and what's important to you and things like that. And people can answer those as best they can. But that vote was an anchor in the sand for people. They know and they went and they marked their ballot and they know why they did it. And so that becomes a reality anchor, I think, for us moving forward. So I'm really pleased to see that in there.
Can we see that one again?
The first question
First question?
was question number 1. It said, how did you vote and what was the primary reason?
You want me
And
to
so
read
for-
it, Dave?
Yes.
And so,
We'd like to understand what you liked and did not like about the library proposal presented in the November 2016 election. Did you vote on it? And if so, were you in favor of it or against it? And you can select in favor, against, did not vote, and in parentheses, we still want your responses or prefer not to answer. And then question number 2, please explain the primary reasons for your vote, for or against, or your decision not to vote on the library proposal in 2016, and then they give you open space to do a free write.
the rationale in conversations with Bruce on the second question was that the second question would allow people top-of-mind response. I think that's the terminology used. And so, for all the people that the site is the main reason, they'll put that down right in that space. That'll be what they'll do. That's their top-of-the-mind response. A question that's a forced answer question, that makes it out to be yet a third referendum on location, it forces people to make a decision on something that may or may not be important to them. For a bunch of people in town, site may not be the thing at all. We don't know that.
We don't know
No.
that, but I think you could ask the question and allow people that response.
You
You know,
certainly
you could-
can.
You could ask a question saying, if you want to, and Bruce is a professional here, and Bruce
Right.
can tell us why or why not he's gonna do this, and I don't wanna but you certainly could ask, do you prefer this site, do you prefer that site?
Or it
Is
doesn't
site
matter.
not important to you?
Right.
And are other things more important? So that could be asked.
Ooh, I see that now. In one of your 4-box answer things. It was important, it wasn't important, or I don't care. Or One Lime Rock, RES, I don't care.
Some of that comes up in the question 3, because it asks how important the one Lime Rock site was in your decision to vote. But I think a follow-on question is.
What if you just change the can you go to question 4? What other question he was just referring to about One Lime Rock?
It was question 3, I think.
Up, yep.
Too far.
Down out of it again. Just go up. You gotta be in the document to be able to scroll with
I
your
know,
fingers.
problem is I can't see the mouse.
Yeah, it's.
Do you want us to do it?
Did you want an assistant?
I can do it for you.
We could pull it over here, actually. I think it was question 3 you wanted, Rick?
No, whatever question you were just talking about, that refers to One Lime Rock Street.
Oh,
That's
it's
it, right
question
there.
3.
Oh.
That's question 3.
Oh, I thought there
That's-
was,
right
I
here.
thought there was another question.
No, that's
that-
the only one that refers to.
Right, so,
This is asking about the previous vote.
right, so the whole first page is about the proposal that was presented in November 2016. That's why you see One Lime Rock, because that's what was in the proposal. From the free response, my thought, and, you know, I'm coming into this totally cold objective, my thought, you've got 2 opportunities right on the first page to talk about location. If you bring out a site that wasn't part of that proposal, it kind of weighs it the other way. And from my perspective, not having been involved in this for 5 years, I didn't know if that site was still on the table, and that's for everybody to, that's for
That's what we need the people to tell us.
you to decide.
I thought the language that you said, or Rick said, that you said was the top of mind, that's that free flow.
Right, and that gives some hierarchy.
And that's interesting. I'm curious, how do your responses go if you put it, say, after all of these questions, and basically you've refreshed everyone's mind onto the fact that, yes, there was an exterior design that was questionable, there was site, there was cost, and then you asked for that free flow response at the end, but you're looking for what's vivid and
I'm
visceral.
looking for what they're carrying around town
Right.
right now. I don't want to educate them first.
Right.
Because by educating them, we'll bring up things that may not have been a problem for them. And so the open-ended response is a much stronger measure of what's bothering somebody or what somebody favors, as opposed to then aiding them in question 3. But we do question 3 in addition to the free response, so that we do get all the issues out there on the table, because they're gonna read a proposal again. That's the whole thought. And just, I should have said this, but with the web survey, question 3, all of those attributes will be randomized, so they will not be in the same order. Because even the order of those, you know, to have it.
I wanna,
Sure.
To get back to what some of Tom's comments in regards to Rick's comments about the site, yes, I agree that, you know, if we said One Lime Rock Street, that there would be people that would be very unhappy. There's no question. I think some of them are probably sitting here in the audience today. And I guess you could say, well, but how big is that group? And you're right, we don't exactly know. But I will say that the previous select board did go through this process over 3 years, 4 years. I think everybody who had something to say about it had their turn at the podium and at the ballot box. So again, no matter which site you pick, there's going to be unhappy people. But I believe that the previous select board, in going through their process and hearing from the professionals, you know, made the decision. And, you know, we're going to have to accept that there's going to be people in town that are unhappy either way.
Doug, can
And
I just?
again, I'm just wanting to see
I
it.
want
in
Ann
there?
and Ben to have a chance here.
So I certainly appreciate what you're saying, Doug. I just want to remind people that there was some contentiousness in terms of the process that went through, and that I feel like this was after the vote, and then the select board took on that whole role of process. And it appeared in some instances, because I did hear from other people, that that whole process didn't seem to fairly look at both sites, to really give the community an opportunity to weigh one site costs versus another. I'm not saying good or ill, I'm not proposing one over the other. But I do rather agree with Tom and with the rest of the group that you want to use the survey to bring people together, to gain some momentum, to gain information. And if you don't, you know, I don't know, bite the elephant in the room or whatever the term is, that you're missing an opportunity to have those people, which is what the library committee talked about the last time we met, that there was a strong feeling that people really wanted to have an opportunity to really state why RES is important to them. You know, maybe the fact that
So-
whatever, the parking or whatever. And the other thing is, I'm not sure that question on parking with 14, level, I'm not sure that that's gonna get you a lot of information, but that's just my comment.
So back to asking the question about One Lime Rock or RES and including the $4 million budget or more. We're just opening up more of a can of worms because the $4 million object had already been turned down. So I'm just, how much you,
Well, again,
we don't know that till
we
we
hear
get it
from a lot
back.
of people that they know why the vote failed. Unfortunately, we don't hear the same thing from a lot of people, so that's why we're doing this. I
And as
do-
you said, the vote was pretty much a tie.
It was a tie. It was essentially a tie. About the location, one thing that we've talked about, and Rick has mentioned this several times, and this is in driving the response rate to the survey. We know that everybody in this room is gonna fill out the survey. We know that the people who feel strongly about the library and whether it's at One Lime Rock or RES or cost or whatever, are gonna fill out the survey. We really wanna find out how the broader public feels about it, and that's one of the reasons that we do the survey. And I have to say that I do think that if we ask the question directly about the site, that the number of responses that we get back that say they don't care about the site would be really important to us, because it would tell us, if we got a big number who say they don't care, then that would tell us, hey, we got the middle. And to me, that would make all the rest of the responses more valid and more valuable. We'd know we got a good cross-section of the people, because if we get back surveys and we get 80% saying they'll never vote for a library at One Lime Rock, and 80% another, or 50-50 saying that one of the side they'll never vote for it at One Lime Rock, and one say they'll never vote for it at RES, and then the in-between has no responses, then I think that would tell us that we missed the middle. And I think we really need to get the middle. So that question, in addition to being a follow-up on the location here, which I think is the only question in this list that doesn't have some sort of follow-up, I think that would give us some information about the middle. And I would invite Bruce, you're the professional, we're telling you how to do all this stuff, and we don't know how to do it, is the bottom line. So please feel free to tell us we're wrong about something, or to tell us that the ideas that we have are good, bad, or indifferent.
Well, I would just caution that you want to be able to act upon whatever kind of response you get back. So I guess my challenge to the select board would be, if RES is the winner, are you willing to go that far back in the process?
Yeah.
We're willing to be led where the
mean,
data takes
and-
us,
and-
which
and
is,
I say that,
I shouldn't say we, I should say I.
I say that because I'm not trying to, sway the survey one way or the other. I do think there's ample opportunity in the first two questions to bring up site as an issue. And what the responses to those two questions, if site was a negative, would do is we need to revisit site. You need to revisit site in a big way. It doesn't definitely point to RES, but it says that site was an issue. So that's not gonna be ignored.
So,
That's how I addressed it in the survey.
so instead of having it location at One Lime Rock Street, please check the appropriate box, not whether it's weighted very negatively or very positively.
This question, though, Mark, has to do with the previous proposal.
I wanted this to be very direct on the previous proposal,
And I get
because
that.
that's where people put a stake in the ground.
I think this question number 3 is good, by the way. I do think it's good, because it does allow people to vocalize how important and to weight how the aspects of the previous proposal, how they felt about it. There may be some people who love the design of the building, and I think that, I'm assuming that with your tabulation, you'll be able to see that if let's say I'm gonna pick on you for a minute, Ames. I'm gonna guess that Ames, the location at One Lime Rock, is gonna circle a 1 there. And I'm gonna guess that she might circle 9s or 10s on almost everything else.
And I
Let's
guess,
just say for the sake of argument that she might.
And that's probably true.
and where I was
But
going,
then you're gonna know that she voted no on the proposal. And so I'm guessing that your data crunching is gonna be able to tease that
and
out.
where
to
I
say
was
that-
going with that, listening to Carol and Dave and Bill and everybody, is that if you had one Lime Rock or RES, just as separate boxes, and check the box, not giving it a strong or weak.
I think that would be the follow-up question, that if we had, I would leave this the same, because I think this is gonna give us a ton of data, I
Right,
believe.
because it's on the.
I think this is one of the core questions.
I do too. But if later on, if the board decides and if Bruce agrees, then the follow-up question could be, you know, which site do you prefer? And then it would be, as I said, one Lime Rock, RES, or I don't care.
I think in terms of organizing if I could just speak for just a second, organizing the questionnaire.
Why don't you come up and sit at the mic, Dave, so that the folks at home can hear you?
I think the matter of organizing the questionnaire, I wholeheartedly agree with Bruce. You need to have the first section of the questionnaire devoted to why you voted the way you voted. Then you go on to what would you like to see in another proposal, I think. And I think that's the way you've organized it, and I would applaud that.
Okay. Yep, thank you.
Pat, did you want to say something? You have to come up if you do.
Do you want me to?
We have a small group, so I'm gonna be a little lax with the public comment here.
Jeez.
Oh, it's just a little tall, sorry about that.
Pat Messler. I just see one discrepancy, and this is sort of off the topic of location, but what kind of drew me to it is when you said that, well, the last select board voted on one Lime Rock, so that's a done deal. Well, they also voted that we needed to tear down the old building and build a new one, which is why we hired Reed to design a new building. And yet, in this question number, is that
Number 3,
new construction as opposed to renovating the existing structure? Renovating the existing structure was dead in the water for a long time. I mean, it's been almost a year and a half that decision was made. And so I guess what I'm seeing is inconsistency by suggesting that, okay, we can renovate the old structure. Even when, for months and months and months, it was understood that we can't renovate the old structure.
Well, then if you want to leave it at 1 Lime Rock Street, I'll agree, we'll go ahead and tear it down and build a new library.
Well, I don't want to negotiate with you. I'm just trying to point out that to someone who just walked in the door and was reading this, that was something that jumped out at me, and I'm guessing that that's going to be true of a lot of the public. That they're going to say, what? I thought we couldn't renovate the old structure.
that's right.
So it seems, yeah, it seems like a false,
To clear out, you can
Suggestion.
renovate it, it's expensive. Does it make sense? Probably not, but you can renovate anything if
well,
you've
but
got
this
enough
question
dollars.
intimates that all you have to do is do a little renovation
No.
and you've got yourself a new building.
It's gonna be expensive to renovate it, but you can renovate it. You know, it can be renovated.
Well,
Is it
anything can
worth
be
it?
renovated.
Yeah, exactly. Is it
Right.
worth
I
it?
mean, we
Does
could
it make
renovate,
sense?
You know,
Probably not, but.
right, but, okay. That's my point, is it's misleading, that's all. I'm not taking sides.
Tom?
So, the point that I'm trying to get at is not really about, it's frankly not so much about the data that we can get from the survey as it's written, or even if it were written differently. It is about the perceptions around the entire process, which are toxic in the town right now. And my goal is to, what I'd like the board's goal to be, is to do everything it can to alleviate the toxicity around this issue. So one of the ways that there's some specific ways that we can address that. One of them, when we hang our hat as a board on the idea that months ago, the previous board voted to put it at 1 Lime Rock. Well, that statement rests in the board's authority to do that, which it has. But the public has the authority to feel bitter about that. And there are those in the public who feel that when the board did that, it was directly overriding the wishes of the voters in the previous referendum. Whether that was what the board meant to do or not,
Some of the people, we don't know the numbers, Tom.
no, we
could
don't
be-
know the
there
numbers.
There could be a very vocal minority.
But I think that we know that it's enough at least to be significant.
Well, perhaps.
There's that. And then there is also the issue that whether we can get the data we want out of the survey as it's written or not, if we don't have the specific question, which many folks have asked for, about the location, people will go forward from that point feeling that the survey skirted the issue. Not all people, but some people.
Some people.
And that will undermine the integrity of the process. And the integrity of the process is really measured by how the town feels about it. So I, for myself, personally, am prepared to fully support whatever data we come up with, what the town wants, even if that, heaven forbid, I think that the worst result I could personally envision is if the town says they don't want a library. I would grieve for that, but I think we need to get at it. I think we need to go specifically at everything that might be uncomfortable that's out there in the can of worms to see what the worms are. And I worry that if we're not that specific about it, we will have an enduring issue of toxicity which will come back to haunt us.
I just want to address the integrity of the process, though, Tom. And I've sort of been against the survey from the beginning just for that very reason, because I think there are a fair number of people in town who felt that a process was gone through over the years and a decision was reached, and then suddenly everything gets tossed up in the air again under the auspices of the integrity of the process. But what happened to the integrity of the process when Bill Chapman was running the board and that these two fellows were here?
I'm not sure I understand your question, but I think.
Well, I'm saying there was a process that was gone through.
Yep.
And a decision was reached, and suddenly, we're having a survey, which again kind of surprised me. That had been decided before. And the whole question of the survey says that the process that was gone through before for the last 3 to 4 years, with people up here, people going to the ballot box, saying that process, the integrity was no good, and by going ahead with a survey, we're somehow going to come up with the true integrity of the process.
Well, let me having been on that board, talk a little bit about that. We had the vote, which was a tie vote. The select board then
What was the
decided.
vote?
Pardon me?
What was the vote?
It was
I mean, was it close enough for a recount? Did anybody ask?
Nobody asked for a recount.
Okay.
It certainly was close.
It
enough
was
for a
close,
recount.
we know
There was
that,
there was 9 votes out of
right.
almost
No.
2,000 cast. So it was essentially was a tie vote. The select board then took ownership of the process, and we, some select board members assembled a panel of experts, and we talked about various different aspects of planning and town planning and construction possibilities of each site, aspects of whether it would be best to locate it in each site or not. And the select board, after that process, voted to proceed with a proposal for 1 Lime Rock Street. The vote was 4-1. After that, we then met with Dick Reed again. And let me back up. Right after the vote in November, a survey was proposed, and it was knocked down because people came up to the podium and said, basically, I won't believe whatever survey you do. And that's a symbol of the toxicity that we were dealing with that Tom mentioned. So the survey was decided against at that point, reluctantly by me. I really wanted to do it, but when I heard somebody get up to the podium and say, I don't care if you do a survey, I'm not going to believe you, that really bothered me. So at any rate, we fast forward, we had the experts come in, we voted at that point to pursue a proposal at 1 Lime Rock Street. We then had Dick Reed come in and meet with us in a workshop setting. And Dick told us basically that, and this is an outsider looking at an architect, he said, you've got to work harder to figure out what to do, what your town wants to do. And that's what got us to the point that we are right now, where we put a budget proposal forth for the market research, we called it. It was on the ballot at town meeting. It was proposed on the town meeting floor that it be taken off the ballot. That proposal failed, so the town wants us to do this. I do think that we have to address the location, and I want to talk a little bit about what Tom said about integrity. The way the survey is designed right now, the folks who want RES have 2 places to indicate that on the survey. They have the free response after the first question about why did you vote the way you did, and they have this question number 3 where they can circle a number 1 that they have a very negative aspect of the 1 Lime Rock Street. So we will get the information on the people who really prefer RES, we will get the information in the survey as it's currently designed. I firmly believe that. But I think Tom's point about the people feeling more involved is valid. And so if we ask another question, I don't think we're necessarily going to get more information from that other question, but we might make people feel more involved in the survey and then more involved in the process. And so I think that it's worth strong consideration on that end of it, because I think, and we'll also, I think that right here, this location at 1 Lime Rock Street, people have the opportunity to say neutral on that. Well, we don't necessarily know if they're neutral on the RES site. They might hate the RES site. They might say, well, I'm okay with the 1 Lime Rock Street, but there's other spots to consider. I don't want to go down that road or not. But I do think that asking the other question would go a long way toward helping the people feel involved with it. I don't think that we're not going to get the information the way it's designed now, but I think that your point about helping to have people feel good about the process is important.
And can I clarify that I certainly don't intend to impugn the integrity of anybody who is on the board now or who was on the board before. But what I know is that in the world of public perception, which has limited information for most people, there was a referendum in November which turned down having a library at Lime Rock, but then several months later, the board voted to put the library at Lime Rock. And to a lot of people, knowing only the amount of information they know, they couldn't figure out how those things were connected. So
You do know that the board recommended unanimously to oppose that proposal that failed.
actually,
keep it.
I didn't know that, and that tells you something. I'm operating in the amount of information that ordinary people in the town would have had.
And so, you know, one of the things that we struggle with, and why, you know, when the survey was brought up, and I felt like I'd gone through a process, as flawed as it may have been. I went through a process, gathered a lot of really good information, was asked to make a decision, made a decision, happy to do that. If the folks want us to go and again go through this process, okay, it's totally cool, because you're right. Not everyone, including actually a lot of the folks who are currently sitting on this board, attended our process or actually were engaged or involved in our process. So I actually think that it's somewhat appropriate with this new board that will be stood up for a while for us to go again through this process. That said, we're talking about this thing, which is process stuff. So can we get back to this thing?
Yeah, I want to get back to Bruce and
we're
let
getting
Bruce
back to
comment
Bruce.
on the discussion on the site question, I guess. How do you feel about what you've heard at this point?
Well, I mean, three points. A, I agree with what you said, that we would get at the site question based on what we have here. But to the point about dealing with perceptions, that's what I do for a living, have for 30 years. Perceptions are sometimes factually right and sometimes factually wrong, but they're perceptions. So if it boosts the integrity of the process, then I think it's fine to put a question in about location. However, and this is a third point, I would word it in such a way that people rate their impression of each location, because you're right, somebody might feel neutral about 1 Lime Rock and hate RES, and you got to know that it's not just one, the other, or I don't care.
I agree with you about that.
So it's
follow-
got to be that kind of question.
Can I follow that line and try to free you up some space to ask those questions, keeping it at 12 point? The one specific to the 14 parking spaces, we had a lot of robust conversations about parking, and everyone has their own perception on, do we have enough parking or don't we have enough parking? You put that question on there specifically as a follow-on to this parking question because you felt that we as a board presented to you that this was a very critical question for us to answer?
Right, that was input that I heard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just trying to figure out if I can cut a question.
Well, don't worry about that right now.
Yeah,
Don't worry
Get your
about that.
spreadsheet.
I'm pretty good. I'm not good at this, but I'm pretty good at manipulating Word.
the one thing I would suggest is that you don't force people into a forced choice, that you allow people to choose the option that site doesn't matter.
Well, if we
Yeah.
word the question as Bruce is suggesting, and there's two lines,
But then-
one Lime Rock and RES, and then numbers like this.
Right, but then you're still making them choose between one or the other.
No, they could circle 5 on both of them.
Yes, but it,
One or the
Well,
other.
and I think that's what I said earlier, if you
Yeah.
have one check for that, or one check for that, or I don't care.
Yeah.
Right, but you need to have the negative too.
But it is important.
But yeah,
It's important for us to know how strongly people think about this, because there may be some people that have advocated for the RES site all along, that see a plan for one Lime Rock that's, oh, this is the perfect size library, we have wonderful private donations, we have a great plan for the use of the library space, we have the parking problem solved, you know what, this is pretty good, I'm gonna let go of my RES preference. It may be work the other way too, I don't know, but I think that you know how to tease that out, so.
I just wanted to make one more comment on this number. I can't remember what number it is, 3 or
Number
whatever.
3, yep.
It is going and talking about the bond, and so I think is misleading because it wasn't really part of the bond question. So,
Where? What?
Oh,
yeah, please indicate, because this was right in direct response to the bond initiative, right?
This is about the question that was on the ballot.
Right, so there was no question on new construction as opposed to renovating.
Yeah, I guess
I
I
think
kind
it's
of, I
very-
kind of
I think
agree with
it's-
that. I
Yeah.
think, I think
I
I
think
would
that
be
needs to
happy
go.
with lopping that off, that one line
Anyone
off, and
else,
then-
is
and then-
anyone opposed to that on the board? Cause I could see that question making
That,
itself
maybe that gives you
go
room
away.
for the
Okay.
site question.
Because I think it's a valid thing. We had a conversation as a community and as board about renovation, and it was relatively clear that Rick's accurate and correct, that yes, we can renovate that building, but cost effectively, and what do we get out of it? It's really, we don't win under that scenario.
And it's not something we've heard from the community very
Not
much
really
either.
much.
We haven't heard from the community that they want that as an option.
Once we had
so.
an engineering study that said this building's in pretty poor disrepair, that renovation topic pretty much dropped off.
So let me pose this question to the board as a way to move forward, and I'll let Ann and Ben kick in too. If we instruct Bruce to strike the line I here and include a question, a direct question about, a follow-on question about location, I'm not gonna say direct, I'm gonna say a follow-on question about location, are we okay with the rest of the survey?
I just wish I had a printout.
So do I.
Yeah.
You know, it's very difficult.
I would appreciate it if, as I mentioned before, the question about the cost, if we could bring these figures that are here in question 3 somewhere in proximity to that other question so that people,
Seems like you could include them in
Can
parentheses.
reference
you
it
know,
in
this
some
is,
way.
2016 proposal was 4 million, you know,
Or
and 2
reference
million,
question
whatever.
3 or
yeah,
something.
something,
that
just
tells them
something
where
like
to go.
that.
Because, yeah, I mean, I picked up on that too. Very valid point. The numbers are there. They're just not in close proximity, one question to the other, but the financial aspect.
Okay. Whoops.
I feel like I haven't heard anything from Big Ben.
No, I haven't
buddy?
chatted anything. Well, I sort of stay out of the location. My job is to focus on what the building provides.
Do you feel like you're getting good information on
Yeah,
programming?
yeah. Later on when we start talking about what people care about in the library, I'm really happy about that. The only thing I can free you up some space. We don't have any meeting space. So on question 6, there was something about meeting space, and we just don't have that right now. So I don't know
But-
if
Right.
we want
I-
that, but
I-
we
What
want
you
it.
want it.
Yeah, you wanted it, so
Okay.
Could you
That's
scroll to
fine with
question
me
6
then.
so we
Yeah.
can see that?
I mean,
That's important to people. We
No,
we
no,
should
and
know.
that's sort of just, that was the ambiguity without reading this straight through, if that was
Yeah.
about what people wanted in a future, or if it was about what we currently had and what was important
Right.
right now.
No?
Yeah.
Nope, you went back up.
So if it's about what's important, though, then I mean, we could add a lot more space on there.
Now you're in there, okay, so now we can go to, up,
Keep going.
Nope, there you
this
go.
this question.
Yeah, that one. I mean, so that's one of those ones where it's, we could add a lot of other
scroll
things.
down
or-
just a bit, so we can see the whole question.
No, that is.
That's all.
No, I want
Well,
to, yeah, please rate how important or not you feel that the Rockport Public Library offers the following. It doesn't say that we currently offer them, but it offers people a chance to say that meeting space is important, and that would mean
Okay.
that they would
Yeah, I
go.
Yeah,
tried to
that's
push
fine
the
with me then.
envelope because these were things that were in the design.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I wanted to not just limit to what's currently available, but what
What could
your
be? No,
dream would
that's
be.
wonderful then.
So I
Well-
do have a question on how it's worded, Bruce, so maybe you can help me. Because you start out with how not important. Isn't it better to start how important?
Nope,
No, okay.
nope, because I'm following the same way
I
that the
see.
scale
Okay.
goes.
All right.
Because if you flip it in the question, then the scale's the other way.
I gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, not to be so abrupt, but that's.
No, that's good.
That one,
I would prefer it the other way, but that's why we write him the check.
Yeah.
The other question I have for you too is, and this is sort of a process part. I know there's probably going to be you'll have a link that can be accessed from the town website. I think we had talked about having it on the library website. I didn't know if that was something that we had been thinking about. And then I didn't know if there's like a little handout that people could have at the library. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna promote it
Okay, all right,
so hard.
okay.
How do you prevent people from doing it at one computer, then another computer? then
There's the
another?
whole thing.
Yeah.
There's
He
the whole
knows how to do
thing.
that. And actually, you should speak to that, Bruce. That would be, just very briefly if you would, because it is a
well,
concern
well,
of
one way is at the very end, we're asking people to put their street address down, and a survey will be rejected if you don't put your street address down. It's just gonna be one of the rules of the process.
But four of us living in one address may all. be
We have
ready
other
to
checks to
do that.
figure out if that's what is actually there or not.
You have to come up if you want to ask a question. Yeah.
So we have a number of ways to check the data to make sure we're not getting dupes, and if I tell the
Yeah.
world that.
Yeah.
Sally Cook, resident. Just a question in terms of mailing. What Jan brought up at the last meeting was, I thought, very relevant about some residents, mail is not delivered to all residences in Rockport. A lot of us just have P.O. boxes. And how will everyone be notified about the survey?
Bruce, we have the voter checklist and then the residences, all the property information, and those two databases will get merged together. So if somebody is a voter, they'll get
Or a taxpayer with a residence but maybe voting somewhere else?
right, that's the risk we run, is somebody that's a taxpayer will also get it. They may not be a voter.
So,
Yeah, but if it's addressed to like 10 West Street,
Right,
I'm not gonna get it.
Right,
I have
yeah.
a post office
yeah.
box 760.
So
But
right,
your tax bill comes to the post office box, correct?
right.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so
So
you'll
it-
get it.
you'll get it.
So let me,
Oh, good.
maybe this will clear it up for you, Bruce. So when I did my campaign a couple days before the election, I started getting all these postcards that I sent out to people back. I got about 1,200 of my postcards back because I did not isolate the Excel spreadsheet to P.O. boxes versus physical addresses. Folks that do this for a living and aren't just like random crazy people like me that have no clue what they're doing, they will isolate that. And so your physical address will be used as a check to ensure that multiple people haven't filled out, or one person hasn't filled out multiple surveys, but that survey will actually get sent to your P.O. box versus your physical address. It's all there in the voter registry stuff. It's just isolating columns.
Yeah, so we encourage each voter, each person to respond, but obviously, and talk about hurting the integrity of a system, if you fill out more than one survey, that breaks the integrity right there. So we encourage, again, it's a public comment, it's not a referendum or anything like that, it's public comments about how to come up or to provide input for the best proposal possible for this community. So there's really no reason to force that issue more.
Another question, Ken said something earlier that I thought was interesting. He used Ames as an example about someone that may rate a lot of categories in question 3, for example, high, and one category extremely low, and we can infer things from that. Does your software infer that, or do humans infer that? Do you? How do we get this data, and how do I know that your inferences are accurate?
It's all through our analysis, and I mean, we could go into great detail about that, but we call it slicing and dicing the data about 3 million different ways, so we can isolate those kinds of issues.
Cool. Cool.
And
That's for me.
I don't think you want to know that.
How do you present that, though? Do you say, I mean, I think that's how do you present the results?
We'll present the results by question, and then we'll make references to how the responses differed by
Would you
various
say,
groups.
For instance, 40% of the respondents replied 7 to 6A?
So for 10-point scales, we usually chunk them up into 3 different groups. 1 through 3 is negative, 4 through 7 is neutral, and 8 through 10 is positive. I tend to stay away from means because means smooth out the commitment on one side or the other. So I typically don't use means, and I'm probably a little bit, well, I don't know. I've come across both groups, researchers that use means a lot and those that don't. I believe that they're a summary statistic. So I believe they smooth out the commitment one way or the other. So I like to stick to the percentages of the scales. We will ramp it up to 9 and 10 or just 10 if we're getting 100% of the people saying 8, 9, or 10. Just to show you what the commitment is. And that goes true with the other side too. You know, if we get 100% saying 1 through 3, then we'll start chunking it up. Well, what percent gave 1 and 2 and what percent gave 1? So that we can prioritize the different issues.
What about the written statements? How do you filter through that?
So we have members of our team that will read through every single one of those statements, and they'll assign codes for each individual theme that comes out of what somebody writes down. Somebody might write down 1 theme, somebody might write down 5 themes. And what I mean by themes is somebody might say, I didn't vote for it because the building was too big and I didn't like the parking situation. That's 2 themes. So each one would get categorized separately.
And then would those themes go into, like, have a category heading that goes into?
Yes. Yeah.
On the last page, and I like that you put it at the last page where you start asking for the personal information. Do you ever find that deters anyone? Because you ask about income and then you do ask for a physical address. So now and I know that it's all confidential information and I'm not concerned about that. But when we talk about response rate, is it very important for us to have that information, or is it more important for them to answer library questions and not even risk someone not filling out the survey because you ask about income?
So what typically happens is it's not a matter of whether people fill out the survey or not. It's a matter of whether they answer that question, that specific question. So age, we hardly ever get refusals on age. Education, we hardly ever get refusals. Employment status, we hardly ever get refusals. Income is the big one. We could get about 20% of the people who don't want to answer that
But
question.
one of the options was prefer not to
Prefer not to
answer,
answer.
so
Okay.
we
Yep.
admit that as a possibility going in. I
Right.
think that's fine.
And we put that in there so that we don't just have a blank question. And if a question is blank, we just reduce the base for that question, the base of people responding.
And even if they only fill out 2 questions, 1, what's their physical address, and 2, the write-in thing, you're going to count at least that 1 question that they answered?
Yeah, that's a decision we'll have to make. And that can be the rule, that we, as long as they put their street address down, we accept the survey. Well, as long as there's other valid information.
I do want to try to move us forward because we have 2 members of the board going on vacation in a couple of days, and we want to get this process rolling along in terms of making a decision today about how to proceed. What I'm hearing, and the rest of the board can chime in, is that in general, I think we're very pleased with the survey, with the following suggestions for changes. That is, question number 3, to delete the option about renovation. That was the last one, option I. To add a follow-on question about location, and we'll leave that up to you as to the best way to word that to get the most information. And to somehow include in the questions about budget, the follow-on questions about budget, another reference to what the previous proposal was. Does anybody on the board feel differently about any of those?
I think I'd
Suggested
like to have a
changes.
hard copy before I vote on the changes. I mean,
Well, if you want to have that, then we're, none of us had that going in, and I understand that.
If I remember correctly, there's a certain element of time sensitivity
There
to
is,
it because
and
we want to time
The
this
tough part
with,
about
like,
not
the tax
voting on it
bills.
today is that it probably pushes us back 6 weeks, because we won't have the full board again together for another 5 weeks. Because you guys are gone for 2 weeks, and then I'm gone for 2 weeks. And I do think this is a decision that the full board should make. And if we're sticking to a timeline of a June 2018 vote, we've got to get going on this.
And I gotta say though, Mark, typically, I would well, there's been times where we've reviewed contracts and amended contracts, and then they'll say, okay, we'll vote to approve this contract and we'll just fix everything after, and no.
Not to,
But
right,
with
not to say that there might not be a mistake, but I just would like to have something in my hand prior to.
If we were to vote to proceed with this today without the hard copy, would that mean that it's going fully forward before we have a chance to see it again? Or would it mean that
That's where
he would make the modifications, it would come back to us, and then we'd vote again to send it forward?
The board, it's up to the board.
I guess that's
It is
where I
up to
was
the
going
board.
with all.
But I will comment that if we don't move a vote to proceed today, and I hate to put it that way, but I think we risk missing the boat for June 2018. That's my assessment of that. If you want to, I mean, it's 25 after 5. I'd be willing to suggest that we take a 15-minute break and let everybody have a chance with the scroll pad to go up and down through this themselves and look at it among the board and
Library
Is
committee.
there
committee
any
too.
other place can you send that to us real quick so we could pull it up on some other computers? Is that possible, Ricky?
I mean, is it possible that you can make the adjustments, make those adjustments quickly, and I can get it printed at the town hall and bring it back?
That's more my concern, is not so much what we're seeing here, but if we're asking him to come up with some new stuff.
Right, it's the new stuff, I think,
Right,
making,
just
is
making
that,
sure it's
is that a
correct.
possibility, Bruce, or not?
Should have talked to Dick Reed about how we're a divorcing couple trying to figure out how to build a new house before you took this job.
well, the deleting of the renovation thing, that's easy.
That's easy.
I
That's
think the
easily-
prior numbers and the budget questions is pretty straightforward too. It's the follow-on question about the location, I think, that
And
is gonna be
placement of some questions,
Well, I
right?
think we've heard a summary of how you would probably do that.
right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I have a question about location, but,
Oh, go ahead.
well, we haven't really vetted it too much.
Hey, no better time than the present.
There you go.
I have to get it,
Well, I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable position. I mean,
the worst, the big thing, if it was just a web survey, it'd be easy, because you don't have any refinement on space, but because it's a paper survey.
Oh, okay, yep.
If I put in a new question, it could throw everything off.
Yeah.
And, you know, whoops. And sometimes I change a question, if it doesn't fit, I'll change a question based on that.
Well, what does the board want to do? I mean, it's a board decision.
So it sounds like what you're saying is it's not really feasible for you right now to play with the document to
It's
see how
gonna
that
change all
question
the
would go.
formatting and everything, is what you.
Yeah, I wish I brought my laptop, if I brought my computer, which is, it would.
You're not
Formatted
saying
on.
you can't add the question, it's just saying you can't do it right here and right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So having that in mind, how long would it take you to do that, and can it be done in the next couple of days?
Oh, yes, I could do it tomorrow.
So perhaps 15 minutes of our getting together in the next, say, Thursday.
I can tell you for me, that's gonna be tough. I'm booked solid.
I'm not here, but I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, that's like
It's worth a
asking the
try,
union
but-
to make up their own contract without, I'd just like to see what the changes are.
What's everybody's schedule tomorrow?
Booked solid.
Huh?
It's tomorrow.
Well, it's Wednesday.
Some of us have Midco Solid Waste.
Yeah, you have Midco Solid Waste.
Solid waste.
around.
Yeah, we're
And then
vetting.
working all, the whole day before.
What time is that?
What time did we say that was? 5?
5, yep.
I think in an ideal world, I would love to see it before I vote on it, but the realities of the situation seem to be that it's the best path
Yeah.
forward to just vote on.
Keep in mind, Bruce is the person we've hired.
I think to a certain
do
extent, we have
your
to
work.
trust Bruce. And I have to say that, based on what Bruce heard at the last meeting, that he
Yeah.
he nailed 95% of it, I think. And I think that with our input here, that he's gonna be able to come up with something
not-
that'll be acceptable.
It's not like this, the union contract negotiation thing isn't
Yeah.
exactly appropriate. I mean, he's hired by us to do our bidding,
And just to build on that, I mean, the fact that we already do have, I feel that we've defined, that we've asked, or we've given 2 opportunities already to talk about location. This is that add-on, more for the public perception than anything else. It'll give us more information for sure, but, so, with this not being a 3-year contract with really weird nuanced language, I'm okay with voting.
Well,
on
I'll
it
go
tonight.
back to, do board members, do we wanna take a 15-minute break and let each board member have the scroll thing and look through the thing? So will that make you feel a little bit more comfortable?
I'm not opposed to that, but I don't need to do it.
Does anybody wanna do that, or for those who wanted a hard copy, will that make a difference for you, or?
Oh, actually, maybe we shouldn't, because I need to be in Camden at 6.
Okay.
so the question on the location, just to frame the question for you guys, to make sure, because he's gonna write a question that basically has 3 parts to it. The 2 locations, and it doesn't matter to me.
Or, I mean, his suggestion was, I thought I heard Bruce say
Rating
this,
scales.
was to write it just like this question, to say,
Yeah.
question number whatever.
Right.
Please rate how you feel about the following locations for a future Rockport Public Library. A, 1 Lime Rock, B, RES.
Right.
Period. And then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if people don't care,
That's the,
they can circle the
that's different than
fives.
what I just suggested. What I had,
It is.
yeah, it is.
That's what I think Bruce had suggested.
I did come around to that, yes.
Yeah.
Because somebody may think that they're neutral about one location, they hate the other location. Or they may say they're neutral about one location and love the other location. So instead of just pushing one or
Okay.
the other.
Yep, I just want to be clear that,
Get more out
that
of
they,
it.
so all of them are getting what they expect,
Yeah,
you know, there's no
That's what I'm
confusion.
expecting
Yeah,
right
so
now, is a
it's-
question that looks like this, with 2 lines.
right. So half of it is gonna be extremely redundant, because it's basically gonna be question 3, whatever, you know, the 1 Lime Rock. But I think that's okay, because again, I see it as dealing more with the perception of the integrity of the process than anything. So I think that's fine.
Yeah.
And believe me, there won't be a lot of people that will pick up on that either, I don't think.
Well, it's,
I mean,
It's
pick up
a
on the fact that they're
slightly,
answering
it's
the
a
same
slightly
question twice.
different question, because the next question you're asking is a looking forward question, and the question number 3 was a looking backward
Right.
question. Some
Right.
people may have changed their mind.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah,
Right,
wait
so
till you
I'll
get the
make it
response
clear
on
that it's
education. We're
looking forward.
wicked smart around here.
Okay.
We're smart people.
Well, I'm gonna make a motion just because I have it in front of me here, and then we'll decide where we wanna go. I'm gonna move that we authorize the survey moving forward as presented with the following changes. Change number 1, to delete the item about renovation in question number 3, which was item I. Change number 2, to add a follow-on question about location. And question number 3, to include the prior budget numbers in the follow-on budget questions. So that's my motion.
I second that.
Okay. Any discussion about that motion? Everybody comfortable, ready to vote? Okay. All in favor of the motion? All opposed? Okay, we'll have to call the roll. Mr. Kelly?
Mark's okay. No. And I'll say, and the reason for that is I would have preferred to even had something tonight in my hand and/or have a revised one before I would have felt more comfortable about voting yes.
Okay. Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Casas?
Yes.
Dr. Cole?
No, because I, again, feel that doing the survey impugns the integrity of the process that's gone on prior to this.
And Mr. McKinley will vote yes. That's a 3-2 vote.
So can I ask a question then? So now we're moving forward with this. I'm prepared to move forward with a publicity campaign to get people to participate. Because one of the important factors is if we end up with simply the people that we're hearing from at either end of the spectrum again, we'll be in the same boat.
Yeah.
We need to get the people in the middle that, we need to hear from them, and that's gonna take effort. That's gonna mean campaign-like signs out to promote and get people excited about it, publicity in newspapers, and a mailing ahead of the survey, warning people and getting them interested enough to say, where is it? I can't wait for that to come to me in the mail. I wanna tell the town what I think.
If you're gonna do the survey, I think you're absolutely right, Rick, and I think Ken was absolutely right when he talked about that group in the middle. You know, if we get, you know, a 15% response, and people say they love RES, and this place
You do
loves
a mean
Lime
and
Rock.
people don't care.
If there's nobody in the middle that says they don't care, we got a problem.
Yep.
But I think
And I want to stress that the publicity campaign has to be absolutely neutral. It has to be, fill out the survey. We're not telling you how to fill out the survey. We're not pushing one location or one cost or one program or anything else. It has to be, that's all we want. We want you to do it. I can't stress that enough.
Oh, yeah.
And to that end, and I think we had like email banter about it back and forth, already some folks had raised concerns about the campaign and who was involved. And so I believe I'm right in saying that all of the training for everyone that would be a campaigner, all the training will be public, will be open to the public. And even folks that aren't gonna be out and going and knocking on doors, I think that we should advertise strongly as well, the training, and I am not opposed to having the training here and possibly even live streamed, again, adding that transparency. These are the people that are gonna be knocking on your doors, and this is the training that they had, and if you're concerned about their training, you can go back and actually watch how they were trained and what they were told prior to them going out and engaging in this.
You know, the goal is to get people to tell us what they think.
Right.
And that's the message that we'll be saying over and over and over again. Here's your chance. You've gone to the ballot box, you've put the check mark, yes or no, over and over and over again. This is a chance for you to actually tell us what you think. And it's gonna mean we have to, people are gonna get sick of hearing about it, but the goal is to get a 50 or 60%. It'd be nice if we got 50 or 60% of the population, the voters, to participate and tell us really what they think.
The plan for the door-to-door action also, it's really important that we think about the locations in the town. It's important that we avoid any perception that one particular part of town, geographic part of town, is hit more heavily with that than any other. They all need to.
Well, the whole town is being targeted.
Right. But, you know,
We have to make sure that that happens.
We have to make sure that be deliberate about it.
Generally speaking, when is that training gonna happen?
I believe it's gonna, the goal is, because the hope is, Tom is gonna help us with that, is it will be largely kids from school.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna actually try to create a
Well, wait a second. You've already said you're, you know, advocating with the RES group.
Well,
I
they're
have-
National Honor Society students. It's
No,
just-
there's an opportunity for kids who have to do community service.
You're not gonna find anybody in town
to
that doesn't have
participate
an
in like a
opinion.
civic.
Yeah.
What about the young fellow that did our culvert work?
Yeah.
The UMO guy.
Yeah.
I would go for him.
He's great.
He would be good.
All right.
I mean, you're gonna be hard pressed to find somebody, anybody that doesn't have an opinion. I mean, everybody has an opinion.
But as long as they are trained and they know if somebody says, well, how do you think I should fill this out? They're saying, well, I can't
That's
tell you
not their
that.
job.
I can tell you, you know, where to put the pencil and you know,
Where does the
what
Where
happens.
to go to the website?
Yeah, or to go to the website,
I
yeah.
don't understand that. Is this for people who have not responded by mail? Where does,
Yeah.
what are we talking about?
We, the plan is several stages of this. One is to send out a mailing warning people that this is gonna happen. The other is campaign-like signs that we put around town that just say, what do you think? And it just, so people will look at it and go, what are they talking about? And generate some interest, and it'll have a little thing that says Rockport Public Library on it. So people will get an idea of, you know, something's going on, and pay attention, and start to gear up some energy, and then publicity in the newspapers, and then the thing will come in the mail, and they'll hopefully be looking for it, and say, oh, this is what they're talking about, because it'll look like that. And you'll start to see that it's kind of like a branding campaign.
But where does the door-to-door come in?
Oh, after it's already mailed out, and then the hope is that, you know, sometime after school gets started, before it ends, is have a door-to-door campaign to just go around and knock on doors. Did you take an opportunity to fill out the form?
I think what you were concerned about is would people who hadn't be targeted, and no, that's not, it would be
No.
just, you'd be knocking
No,
on
I
all
was just,
doors,
I
yeah.
actually didn't have any concern, I just didn't understand, yeah.
Yeah, it's just to have people go around and remind people with typically, everybody says, responses are always better when you ask somebody.
So
So somebody will go to the door, knock on, have you had a chance to fill out your survey? Yes, I have. Okay, thank you very much, and they go to the next house.
So if it's no, I haven't, do you have one to give them?
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
And
well,
or a
no,
website, the
Or the,
website, right.
Yeah,
Well,
know,
here's
drive
how
them
you
to the
can do
give
it.
them the address to the
Yeah.
website.
That's-
And then also, if there's nobody home, have a door hanger that says, we were here to visit, you know, you hang it on the door, that has the same message. You know, we wanna know what you think, tell us what you think, and take the survey. Here's the
And we
website.
should be able to track the responses as they come in too, so we can let people know, well, we're up to, you know, 200
That's a
people
good
have
idea.
responded, or 50% have responded, make sure your voice is heard too. And,
And then one of the things we're looking at also is to take a page out of the school's playbook, was when they had the Middle Matters signs that went up, and then the day of the election, they went out and they said, vote today.
yeah.
It changes the sign enough so people say, oh, yes, that's right, something happened. So there'll be a label that will go on that will say, there's still time, the deadline is such and such a date. So, you know, there'll be a campaign of this stuff going out first, people will start to get interested, hopefully, and then, you know, like the week before the end, some labels will go on, you know, the deadline is coming up such and such a day, still time to respond. It makes the sign new, because after a while, people don't even see the sign.
Yeah.
So it makes the sign new again, and then, you know, the hope is to have people going around knocking on doors and just making that contact, because people respond when they're asked.
What are the dates? I mean, what's the end date? When you're,
One of the, Bruce and I haven't finalized that yet.
Map that out fine.
Right.
yeah.
One of them, the date we're tentatively looking at is September 15th, but does that give us enough time to have a campaign of people going door to door?
Well, so when are we training these folks?
Yeah, that's
was the question.
That's
that
the question.
still
I
haven't
have a
been
meeting
answered.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Yep, I have a meeting
Okay.
tomorrow morning at 7, so.
Will there be stamped return and?
Yes.
Yes, oh, yeah.
Yeah, postage paid envelopes, yep.
But
The
that's
web-
why,
the
that's why
website
it's
is the best
cheaper.
way to
That's why it's cheaper. We pay
You have to pay
for
for
every.
each one of those, yeah.
everyone that
So if
comes
you don't mail
back.
it in, then we don't have to
And if
pay.
you use the website, we don't pay. And plus, Bruce's time, his staff time, it's easier, if they do the online survey, it automatically gets entered into the database.
Nobody has to.
If they mail it in, somebody has to sit there and enter all of that
Enter all
stuff.
the-
and is it like Survey Monkey that you can't do it twice?
It's better than SurveyMonkey.
I have a question about that. Like, my mom lives with myself, and she doesn't have a computer. So if I go on and I fill it out and do a survey, can she also do the survey from my computer, or will it reject it because it's already come from that?
No, she can, as long as we can track that there's a couple of people who are eligible to do it from your
Okay.
household. Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Do we have
Yeah,
anything else?
just so you know, the postage paid envelope not only is the postage rate, but it's also the post office's handling. So a survey that comes back to us in the mail, the postage paid is like $1.20 each.
And the data input is already done on the web.
That's correct. So that saves even more time and money.
I move to stand adjourned.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
I gotta think about this.
He's gotta go to that
Motion
first school.
passes.
He's gotta go to that.